Shalom, everyone. It's Mayor Weinstein. I'm joined with Mayor Jolowitz. We're living in very historic times right now. Israel's prosecuting a war against Hamas. We have a lot of the world against the Jewish people, against Israel. Canada just came out with a statement today condemning Israel, condemning two of the ministers in Israel, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. Thank God the Israeli government has condemned the statements from the government of Canada. The government of Canada has been descending into more overt anti-Semitism than ever. And what we're going to be discussing tonight is the fact that there are Jewish traitors in our midst. We have certainly Jews in the United States and in Canada, some of them. There's an article that just came out the other day about Shaul Magid. He's a professor. He doesn't believe Israel should be a Jewish state. He's against Israel as a Jewish state. And he justifies BDS organizations, many BDS organizations. He's been appointed to lead the Jewish Studies Department at Harvard University. And one of the disturbing things is that some Jewish organizations is coming to his defense, the Shalom Hartman Institute. And we have some interesting personalities that, I was pretty surprised. Shalom, what's his last name? Shalom Custenbaum made a statement.
Shabbos Custenbaum. Yeah.
Right. Made a statement in the article by the Jerusalem Post praising Shaul Magid. We have in Israel a former prime minister, Ehud Olmert, that accuses Israel of committing war crimes, crimes against humanity. And he is being paraded by vicious anti-Israel media types, such as Piers Morgan, to justify their venom against Israel. There's a list. Meir, this is not necessarily new to us, but what should the response be by the Jewish people against these people who are obviously traitors and obviously helping fuel the flames of anti-Semitism and defamation against the Jewish people? And it's no longer just the idea of protest any longer, certainly in diaspora. Now it has taken the form of shootings, murdering Jews in Washington, and firebombs, Molotov cocktails in Colorado against Jews. So the fans are right there at this moment. Meir, go ahead.
Yeah, what we're talking about today in the brief time that we have is a measure. It's an examination of the self-hatred, which is known nowhere else in the world. It's remarkable. You mentioned Ehud Olmert. Ehud Barak is of that group. Yair Golan, who is a candidate in Israel, hoping to become the third largest party in the next election. There's a measure of self-hatred which they should be smart enough to understand is used and exploited by our enemies. And the consequences are quite dire. You mentioned Shaul Magid and the fact that he was he's been at Harvard since 1923 as a visiting professor, but he was just hired to be at the Harvard Divinity School to teach a course on Judaism, Jewish history, Zionism, and the like. You mentioned an article in the Jerusalem Post, and I just want to read the headline of that article. It's interesting.
Right.
I have it right in front of me.
Yes.
The headline of that article reads as follows, and I'll ask people to listen quite carefully, because I'm going to change it just by measure. The headline as it appears is, Harvard Divinity School appoints professor who has criticized Zionism to new Jewish studies role. Okay. This, I don't know why that's a news story. It should, if it was a news story, it would have been this. Harvard Divinity School appoints a professor who hasn't criticized Zionism, who hasn't criticized. The fact that Harvard is appointing these professors who criticize Israel isn't a news story. It's the norm. It's only when you have someone who is not of that ilk that it should become a news story. That's how bad it's become. Now, these people, you mentioned Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan makes his business by having people speak about the war in Gaza, talking about the conflict. And he will have these viciously vitriolic anti-Jewish voices, anti-Israel voices. And then on the other side, you'll have people who claim is the opposite position. I'll give you a perfect example. Piers Morgan has someone who speaks on behalf of Hamas, supports Hamas, explains that October 7th wasn't a massacre of Jews, it was Hamas killing Israelis, which he justified. Piers Morgan, in order to present the Israeli position, what does he often do? He says, well, on the one hand, we've got someone who's pro-Hamas, and on the other side, we have, and he introduces one or two people who are anti-Israeli Israelis. So anti-Israel Israelis. And this is the game that he plays. An Arab who says that Israel has no right to exist, or a Muslim who says Israel has no right to exist, and some leftist Jew bereft of any intellectual horsepower and courage and any moral standing, who basically agrees with the Arab, says, well, we do have a right to exist, and basically pleads with the audience, yes, we screw up all the time, but please understand that we have a right to exist. It's pathetic, and it's the name of the game. And it isn't just Piers Morgan. We see Tucker Carlson with his tremendous audience do the same thing.
Right.
Candace
Right.
Owen, who's these are people who have exploited these anti-Jewish leftists in order to make their own case. And we, your voice, my voice, and others such as ours, are a voice in the dark. We're overshadowed by two former prime ministers and another who wants to be prime minister, former deputy chief of staff, who basically said that Israel is committing war crimes, that Israel kills Palestinian babies as a hobby. And the other one, who was a deputy chief of staff, talking about Yair Golan, who actually referred to the IDF as Judeo-Nazis.
Right.
So to play to the subject matter that you gave for this little thing that we're doing today, these are the Jewish traitors, and they are being exploited at our expense, tragically.
Right. What should the response be from the Jewish community, those who get it? What do we do? Like, for instance, I remember 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, a synagogue in Toronto, the Best Tzedek, hosted Shaul Magid. And I had the information on him. Maybe not everybody had all the information about him, but I had the information that he was justifying BDS organizations and praising various BDS leaders. And I had certainly tapes of him where he's come out and said he's against the idea of a Jewish state. So I registered for the event. I went there. It's a large synagogue, large conservative synagogue in Toronto. I registered to go there, and they had police there for security. And I went and I showed my credentials. They said, you're not going to be allowed to come in. I wanted to go and ask questions during the question and answer period and point out exactly what his connections were and what his statements were that are anti-Semitic. Because if you're against the Jewish state, then you're just an anti-Semite. No, they rolled out the red carpet for him. They didn't have a good turnout, I'll tell you that much. That's good. But the people who were running the synagogue, the Best Tzedek, were praising him and were keeping me out. So we need to make inroads in the Jewish community to make sure that these Jewish anti-Semites are flushed out. What do we do, Meir?
Well, the first thing is we recognize that there are more of them than there are of us, and it's a tragic comment to have made. I'm sure that most avenues in the media would be close to you, for example. But when you look at the self-hating Jews that we're talking about, let's take, for example, Peter Beinart.
Yep.
Peter Beinart. We're talking about Jeremy Ben-Ami, the head of J Street. We're talking about Noam Finkelstein. We're talking about all these people who are vicious self-haters, who don't believe that Israel has a right to exist, people like Jeremy Ben-Ami from J Street pretend to support Israel, and everything that they do, everything that they've done since their inception on November 29th, 2007, has been anti-Israel. The media is quick to grab them, and what they do is they vilify Israel, and we're left sort of in the dark. If you look at them in the United States, the Jewish population in the United States is 1.8% of the general population, even though other Jewish organizations like to use the figure, and it's erroneous, of 2.4%. So let's play the game. It's 2%. So American Jews are 2% of the population, but in Congress, they're hyperactive, both in the House. The percentage of Jews who are represented in Congress, both the House and the Senate in the United States, is 9%. It's actually gone up. It used to be 7%. It's 9%. And if you look at the names of these people, the Chuck Schumers, the Bernie Sanders, the Jamie Raskins, the Dan Gold, these are people who are anti-Israel. The Adam Schiffs, they're anti-Israel in every regard. Chuck Schumer, who actually dared to use his pulpit to call for demanded that Israel replace Benjamin Netanyahu early on in the war. These are the people who represent. Now, if one looks at it more carefully, one notices that virtually all of them, all except for one or two of them, three of them, are found in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is also financed to a tune of over 53% by American Jews. And so people don't seem to care the fact that these people pretend to be pro-Israel, and the only pro-Israel that they are is that they support what they call a solution to this problem. It's a Palestinian state. So let me make this point. It's an obvious point that everyone else has thought about, but it seems not to trouble them. Post-October 7th, you would have thought that the notion of a Palestinian state would have been put to rest. No one in his right mind, certainly no one who considers himself to be an advocate of the state of Israel, would say, yes, I think the solution is to give the murderers, those who just burned, mutilated, and raped Jews on October 7th, well, the solution is let's give them the state in Israel's borders. And that's exactly what you have. You have Jewish organizations across the board, the New Israel Fund, J Street, all these, in fact, organizations that people wouldn't believe, HIAS, they're all anti-Israel. And all of a sudden you have Jonathan Greenblatt, for example, representing the Anti-Defamation League, who came on television on Fox News last week, and he was angry. He was pounding, I'm angry because of what happened in Boulder, Colorado. I'm angry. This shouldn't happen. And immigrants shouldn't be targeting Jews, and it needs to stop. Have we forgotten, because the internet certainly has a long memory, that in 2015 and in 2016, beginning specifically in June of 2015, he was the loudest voice, the champion for bringing in as many Muslims. Mind you, this was 2015, before Donald Trump became president. He was a champion of bringing as many Muslims into America as you could possibly bring in. And we had an Obama administration, which of course was quite compliant. So here it is, you have the Anti-Defamation League saying, yes, Israel can handle itself, but we need more Muslims into America. Well, we brought in more Muslims into America, and Boulder, Colorado is one of the byproducts of that. And all of a sudden, we have Jewish leaders complaining about the fact that anti-Semitism is growing. It's growing because of them. It's growing because they're the ones who vilify Israel. I watched the last 2 days 4 different spokesmen who are decidedly pro-Israel, who made a common point. The point that they made was that yes, we agree, we, supporters of Israel, agree that it's a tragedy so many Palestinian civilians have died. My God, why would a third party not all of a sudden become anti-Israel if the spokesman representing a pro-Israel position is talking about the fact that they're a victim? Instead of this broadcast before
Exactly.
broadcast as well. These people are not victims, these were supporters. The Palestinian population in Gaza supported wholeheartedly October 7th. They supported Hamas before, and they support Hamas today. And the proper analysis of the situation is that we need to look at the mirror. It's the power crisis that this is allowed to happen. The only criticism of Israel which should be allowed or that should be heard is the kind that you send or that I send, which is Israel isn't doing enough to end the war. The only citizens whose lives matter are those who are victims of Hamas's terrorism. I don't give a damn about those so-called innocent civilians who actually celebrated the death of Jews. To me, they are not relevant, but that isn't the position taken by Jews who think that they can score points with Piers Morgan or whomever else by saying, yes, we feel the same pain that you do about Palestinians who suffered. This
Absolutely.
this is
Absolutely.
the yeah, yeah.
Mayor, well said. We ran out of time. We'll take it up again, but thank you very much. And to all our viewers, please share this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.